Welcome back, everyone. It has been a terrible week of news across gaming, with 4 very big titles taking, an absolute hammering in the headlines, or in their own development, and a horrible truth behind recent controller drift lawsuits. We were actually quite shocked when we found out the common theme there. So, with that said, let's dive straight into today's sponsor, NordVPN.com/Bellular News. Bellular News is the promo code, where you'll get a 2-year plan with a huge discount and a free month. Why get a VPN, right? It's easy. Do you want to watch content from another region, like a Netflix? Do you want that Japanese Netflix for all that they've got? Easy. Just use Nord's 5,000 plus servers to choose your location, use the internet like you're there. I do it all the time. They also keep you private, and that is important. Your ISP will not know what site to use. That means they can't sell your browsing data to advertisers. They also can't prioritize some of the web traffic you use over others. There's also awesome things like NordLocker. 500 gigs secure storage for only £1.10 a month? Damn good deal. And NordPass for your passwords as well. Now, the app and the browser extension are all super easy to use, and you can get that huge discount and the free month at NordVPN.com/Bellular News, promo code Bellular News. Big thanks to NordVPN. They're really helping us do a bunch of cool stuff, so we appreciate the support. Awesome product. Check it out, and let's get into the video.
The world of Anthem is hostile, and threats can come from any direction.
First, and probably the most noteworthy bit of news this week, Anthem. So, after EA's meeting last week to discuss Anthem Next's fate, they made their decision, and to nobody's surprise, Anthem Next development work has been unceremoniously cancelled. And that does mean that any hope of, a miraculous recovery for the game, well, that hope is dead and gone. Now, this news came via a BioWare blog post that was just called Anthem Update, where the executive producer shared a few quick thoughts. And, there's no explicit reason given outside of just musings on COVID, but I think we all know what's up here, right? Was this ever really going to get the resources that it needed for a full overhaul, just given what that would entail? Anthem Next was born out of a genuine desire, it seems, for BioWare to make Anthem a great game, and I guess a desire from BioWare and their publisher to heal up the crushed reputation they'd both taken. But, just over a year later, it's already served its purpose, that whole Anthem Next story, right? The story of Anthem is no longer just that it's a massive disaster. Instead, no, it's a game that could have been, but now it's a game that, has had to be sacrificed to make BioWare's next games, the ones that you recognize, like Dragon Age and Mass Effect, better. So, I guess we've got to ask ourselves, would we want it any other way? Is it better focusing on the franchises we like? No Man's Sky, that is used as the industry's redemption story, right? But at this point, is it just the exception that proves the rule? Right, it's used as an excuse by everyone in the industry to say that we should have some faith in live service games that, were sold for full price and clearly ended up being unfinished. But in reality, is thinking about that just cutting publishers and devs slack? Holding out hope for no good reason? Anthem, instead, like the Avengers that followed it, is more just of a cautionary tale. So, yes, I guess publishers, stop writing checks junior devs can't actually cash. Anthem's one of them. Now, EA actually did have a PR counter-story ready for this in Laura Millet, she's the Chief Studios Officer at EA. She's been doing quite well. She got a very hefty compensation raise in the last year, from what I understand. But she gave IGN a pretty lengthy interview that basically was about the future of EA's franchises and how they make games. Now, we've talked about Laura before. In April of 2018, she took this new role, and with the help of Respawn's growing influence and success, seems to have set EA off on a better path. Now, the gist of her interview is pretty much this, that EA are focused on the players and that they give their studios creative control. And that is why, since she took the wheel, they have announced, apparently, Skate, College Football, the Command & Conquer remaster, and Mass Effect trilogy. Now, she then ended up looking to Battlefront 2's major recovery as basically one of her first successes at the company, where obviously, at launch, that game pissed people off, rightly so, and so bad that it almost killed loot boxes in modern games. Sadly, it didn't succeed at that one. But when she took over, well, what happened is EA assigned a team of their best from across the world to fix up that game, and, well, where we are now? Battlefront 2 has got a 93% positive rating on Steam. Then, when the interview moves over to Titanfall, she says that it is entirely in Respawn's hands creatively, and she then explains basically how they make games now. And here's the quote from her. "I don't believe in directing or telling games teams what to create. It has to come from the player community and the inspiration and motivation of developers." Now, that does sound good. Does it sound like a quote you'd expect from EA leadership, given the last stretch of time? Now, understand that that is just a PR puff piece in some ways, but EA certainly are putting a bit more money where their mouth is lately, and well, Laura's track record in some of the initiatives she's kicked off, that's actually a pretty good track record, at least for the core games. So, to bring this then back to the Anthem Next news, it may be dead for good, but at least we could say that BioWare are in significantly better hands than the hands they were, in the care of under Patrick Soderlund. Next up, and in another blow to CD Projekt Red's reputation, they've been forced to delay something else, their next big patch, that is moving from February until sometime in March. Now, CD Projekt Red claim that this is because of the security breach, and that did seem odd at first, but there are a few things to keep in mind here. So, the security breach personally affected basically every employee there. So a lot of organizational time would have had to have went into, well, even just debriefing and making sure that everybody in the company was informed and safe and all of that stuff. I mean, when the top brass are scrambling and you've, then had to go and freeze all of your bank accounts, it's going to be harder to stay focused at work. So there is that. But second, and more importantly, according to Bloomberg, the ransomware attack actually locked CD Projekt Red's staff just out of work for a whole 2 weeks. So it just knocked them out. The process then of restoring backups across an entire organization and then ensuring that everything was safe to, go ahead with work, that was not quick or easy. And I think anybody who has, done any large project knows that that would be really hard. So yes, everything is falling apart for CD Projekt Red right now. I'd say that their official communications really should have just mentioned that this knocked out loads of their staff for 2 weeks, but at least this time, they seem to have a valid enough reason. Sure, they could probably have better, security practice and stuff like that, but rather than mismanagement and confusion, well, this time, they kind of just got owned, so it's to be expected. Then next up on our list of doom is Dying Light 2, or specifically, the developer, Techland. So, according to a massive report from The Gamer, Dying Light 2's absence speaks to bigger problems than anyone thought. Now, to explain just how bad, this is what the headline reads. Techland is bleeding talent due to autocratic management, bad feedback, and a lack of direction. So, that kind of sucks. Now, to fire through the examples that they heard from their sources, well, the kind of feedback they gave apparently is shit, so there's that. When discussing the Dying Light 2 setting of modern Dark Ages, one lead staffer said, "At least they know how to deal with women back then." So the CEO hired his wife to work in HR despite having no prior experience, while his sister then ended up the head of international sales. So that's all quite something. So it seems like not particularly fair treatment, and also nepotism going in for the person's family. So that's not good. Then they hired a veteran director from Ubisoft, but he, quote, couldn't break through upper management that is harder to change than the spin of the fucking earth. So that's also quite big. Effectively, the mismanagement of the company makes the worst of what we hear from AAA studios kind of seem like a walk in the park sometimes. So this CEO apparently doesn't trust his employees to actually make anything good, and that means that the CEO forces them to make changes to almost any or every element of the game just at his own whims. This is only a small number of the issues that are highlighted by the article, so if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of what's being reported on Techland, there is a lot of it, but for an overall view, the Gamer keeps on going back to one quote from a source. the fish rots from the head, which is a bit gnarly and something I didn't know. So the story then is of this: incompetence, nepotism, and a massive array of organizational failures, all boiling down to inconsistent micromanagement from a leader who just does not trust his team. The big question then is, how does this happen? Well, without going through the CEO's history, there's only one logical answer here: rapid growth. Techland started off as a small company, one with small projects. The rapid growth, though, came out of the success of Dead Island and Dying Light, and that clearly made, once surmountable problems something that would end up being critical roadblocks as projects needed more and more delegation and larger teams. So it's a sad story, but it's one that you'll kind of find across gaming, both past and present, when people who are not naturally leaders find themselves in that position. Because even if you're the company founder, your job shifts all the time, and you can it's a bit like, being raised into a position where you're no longer competent. So Techland's response to this report didn't actually come from their reply to the gamer. No, instead, it came from an email they sent to influencers where they tried to get ahead of the story. So, bit iffy, to be honest. And they say that they take issues, basically they take issues with the articles, and they say a whole bunch of the stuff is actually, stuff that they're hearing from the first time, and that it's not going to stop them from trying to be the kind of employer that all industry talent dreams of. But honestly, with a report like this floating around, and really not that much refuting it well, they don't really assuage fears, so a bit rough. I guess all they can really do is act on this, and the first move is probably something a bit better about the CEO, and I guess a lot of people would start to have confidence if they knew what the hell was going on with Dying Light 2, and we don't. Then a project we know a lot less about is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. Now, all we really know is that after losing key staff over the last year, well, now the entire development team has been booted from the project, and the project has been indefinitely delayed, with all pre-orders having been cancelled. Do you see what I mean when we opened about this basically being a really bad week for games? So that's effectively all that we know right now. Whatever was going on behind the scenes at developers Hardsuit Labs, it clearly has caused, 2 large delays. There was the 2 of their creative leads, leaving mid-project. This stuff apparently was just all unacceptable for Paradox, and they've now made that difficult, but I assume they feel necessary change to make sure that this game eventually releases in an acceptable manner. So I guess I commend Paradox for their willingness to maybe take that short-term loss, to take that hit, in order to get the long-term win. I think they do have a decent amount riding in this franchise doing well, so let's hope that they can find a studio that can actually do Vampire justice before long, because we need a Vampire, we need one of those games to come out not being scuffed, and the first one certainly came out scuffed, and was only saved by mods. And to round things off, we've got this week's PlayStation updates, which does involve some things that are totally scuffed as well. So Jim Ryan gave big interviews recently, but we're just going to keep it short and sweet for today. More Sony games are going to be coming to PC, and that's going to start with Days Gone. Now, he explains the logic, and it's actually simple. More platforms, more money. There we go. We're in the business of selling games after all. Now, the specific language he used implies that their development of, IP is so expensive that they hope to recoup some of that cost later on PC once they're sort of through with the exclusivity benefits. So use exclusivity as much as you can and then sell on PC. Now, they also announced that a whole new PSVR is being developed for the PS5, but it was super light in detail, so not really much to think about right now. So those are cool details, but it's not going to hide the real PlayStation story from us, no. And this affects everybody, not just PlayStation. So this interview was released shortly after the DualSense was targeted by a lawsuit. Now, here's the truth behind how console manufacturers are treating you right now. So, after the DualSense controller basically marked all 3 console controllers showing joystick drift issues, iFixit decided to do some digging, some research. And they have revealed that the same stick designs are used in all of these popular controllers, and that they've only got an expected lifespan of about 2 million cycles. Now that is roughly estimated to 417 hours of gameplay, which basically is just a few months of continued use. And that's when the expected lifespan of your DualSense controllers or your Joy-Cons, when it goes. Now, all three console manufacturers are releasing expensive hardware that now we know is expected to fail in a few months. And there's no disclaimer there, and there seemingly is no plan to solve the issue, and, no comment on the mounting class action lawsuits that are now targeting all three. So, all the controllers are scuffed. As I said, what a terrible week it's been. But okay, that is it for me. Of course, hit up NordVPN down below, helps us out, and also you get a great service. As my example, swapping over to get Interstellar without having to buy it. Nice and handy. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.